The most popular rig here on the Detroit River is undoubtedly a jig head with a plastic grub. The weight of jig head can vary anywhere from about a ½ ounce right up to about 3/4 ounce, and this is a 5/8. And a round jig head is the most desirable because of the current and the depth that you're fishing at. Now, believe it or not, they don't use a lot of bait here. Most of the guys that are using jigs are using a plastic grub, and they're not using twister tails. They're using plastic grubs that have a straight or no action tail, like this 4-inch plastic worm. Also, a finesse minnow in the 4-inch size works really well. The only problem is because the water temperature is cold. For example, today the water temperature was 52 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty cold. A lot of the walleyes will grab the back of the grub and you actually feel them on for a split second, and either you get your grub cut or it pops off and you miss the fish. So what pretty well everybody does down here that's in the know, they add a stinger hook, and that's what I'm holding up in my hand here. You'll notice this is a piece of monofilament line about 1.5 inches long with a little number 10 treble hook. And this is a stinger hook that you can buy in a 3-pack in a store. You can see that it's got a little loop of line with a little bit of compound that's like rubber. That's designed to be impaled by the hook and then slid over the barb. That way it can't go back up like that. Once you have it on there, you make sure that your worm lays as straight as possible and you tack on your hook. So this rig is ready to go for walleye right there. Now, it's very easy to make these stinger hooks. Let me just show you ones that I made before coming down here. All I did was take a split ring, which I have inside this little bit of surgical tubing, a piece of fluorocarbon material, 10-pound test, and then I've used a snell and tied it onto a number 10 treble hook. Okay, by taking a small piece of surgical tubing and inserting it over the split ring, you're literally doing the same thing. So here's one that's ready to go. There's my split ring with my rubber tubing and my hook. So all I would do is take that, I would pierce it through the hook. The rubber tubing stretches, so it's not going to go anywhere. See how it stays right there? And then I would take my hook again, even though I've got my first stinger in there, this is just to demonstrate. I would put my small hook in there so that it's straight. Okay, so very easy to make these stinger hooks, and you can remove them off whenever you don't want to use them. You can make them any length that you want. If you use stinger hooks when fish are hitting light, you're going to catch more fish. Head shaking. You guys are awfully quiet at the back of the boat.
Oh yeah, I think you're catching all the fish up there.
Are you studying the
technique? The front of the boat.
Well, what I've done is I've gone down to a lighter jig head, and this guy is just on the stinger hook, so I hope he stays on because the viewers will appreciate it, how well these stinger hooks work. Here,
nice
see if
fish.
I can lead him. Look at, oh, good head shake. Perfect eating size, eh?
Nice.
See if you can see maybe even through the net.
Wow.
That there's about a 4-inch distance. Maybe if you hold it horizontally, I'll grab it. This just goes to show you how well these stinger hooks work. There's a 4-inch distance at least between the jig head and the tail of this plastic worm. And you can see that little treble hook, just one of the hooks is in the top part of the walleye. Now, why the walleye hits so lightly, I don't know, but I know that the stingers work really well. I mean, if you wouldn't have the stinger hook, there's no way, you know.
You're going to miss a lot of fish.
Yeah.
You miss a lot of fish, yeah.
I love the average. This fish is probably about 16, 17 inches long. They've been like 18 inches, 17 inches, you know, over 20. Beautiful fish. Just going to put it down again. You're probably saying to yourself, why is he releasing all those nice walleye when they're so good to eat? Well, Mike and Pat catch walleye all the time. And we were out yesterday pre-fishing, and we did get some eating-sized walleye, and we kept a few for eating. Now, you'll notice that the rod that I'm using looks a little bit different because it's not a full grip. And I want to explain to you how important it is when it comes to choosing rods, especially when you're bouncing bottom and sensitivity is important. This type of a grip on this rod is called a split grip. And the reason it's called that, you'll notice that you have the reel seat here with the grip, then you have the blank of the rod exposed, and then you have the butt of the rod. If you take a close look under here, you see where the reel seat is of the reel? You can actually see the blank of the rod in there. So literally, the reel is onto the rod. It's not onto a piece of plastic that's here. And also, notice at the front here that there's no cork. This is where the actual mechanism that you put, I'm going to just undo it for you so you can see it. Okay? This is hard plastic. There's my reel. If I take my finger off, my reel would fall off. So I'm just going to move that back down. When I have my hand on this particular rod and reel, you'll notice that my fingers are on the rod here. I don't have any cork. And also where my fingers are here, the blank is underneath. This makes for a very sensitive outfit, especially if you use braided line. And I'm using 15-pound titanium braid, which is 6-pound test monofilament diameter. I've got a couple of rods here that are split grip, and I'll just show you the difference. This is my bait caster that's right here, and you can see that it's a split grip. These particular ones are called X grip. And then I've got another one which is a little bit higher end. It's more modulus. It's called a TS2. And you can see that it's also split grip. And if I turn to the front of it, you can see that even where you have the front that's a cork handle, notice how they've taken out some of the metal. So it almost looks like a gear in there. That's just to increase the sensitivity. And the same thing, the blank is right under here. And then, of course, it's split grip at the back. So if you look at all three of these split grip rods, you'll notice that some are a little bit longer, the back here, so you got a little bit more of a fighting butt. Some a little bit shorter. So this one's the shortest, medium length, longer, okay? The longer it is, the more you can put it on your arm when it comes to setting the hook. So the first thing I tell parents is that when they buy a fishing outfit for kids, they should consider how tall the kids are. Would you mind standing up for just a minute? Okay, for example, for a girl your size, this would be the longest rod you should be using, not longer. And this rod is probably about 5 feet long. This rod is a little bit shorter. Okay, so the reason I tell parents and kids that they should get rods that are about their height is because when you're fishing with the fishing rod, like this one, if the rod is too long, when you go to cast, you can hit things that are behind you or even bump into other people that are fishing beside you. So the shorter the rod, like this one, if you hold it in your hand, the less chance that you're going to hook the ground with your line or hit things around you. Also, they're not as heavy. When you get into a longer fishing rod, they're much heavier. And for a young person, if it's heavy, they can get tired of holding it.
Right.
Okay, so choosing the right fishing rod is very important. So for your size, either one of these rods would work fine.